In 2017, the Trump administration ushered in a sweeping tax overhaul, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, significantly altering the landscape of American taxation. Among its many provisions, the TCJA introduced a controversial element aimed at addressing the complex issue of offshore earnings held by U.S. multinational corporations. This provision, known as the Global Intangible Low-Taxed Income Rule, sought to curb the practice of American companies shifting profits to low-tax jurisdictions overseas, effectively reducing their U.S. tax liability. The GILTI rule aimed to level the playing field, ensuring that American businesses paid their fair share, regardless of where their profits were generated. However, the implementation of GILTI sparked immediate debate, with critics arguing that it placed undue burdens on American companies, potentially hindering their global competitiveness. Proponents, on the other hand, lauded the provision as a necessary step to prevent tax avoidance and ensure a fairer tax system for all. This clash of perspectives set the stage for a legal battle that would eventually reach the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court of the United States, where the fate of the GILTI rule and its impact on American businesses hung in the balance. At the heart of the controversy lies the complex mechanism of the GILTI rule itself. Designed to target multinational corporations with significant foreign earnings, GILTI operates on the premise that a portion of these earnings, deemed intangible, are subject to U.S. taxation even if generated and held overseas. The GILTI calculation is intricate, involving factors such as foreign tangible assets and a minimum return threshold. Essentially, if a U.S. company's foreign earnings exceed this threshold, they are deemed intangible and subject to U.S. taxation under the GILTI rule. The rationale behind GILTI is to discourage companies from artificially shifting profits to low-tax havens, a practice known as base erosion and profit shifting. By taxing a portion of these foreign earnings, the U.S. government aimed to incentivize companies to invest and create jobs domestically. However, critics argue that the GILTI rule's complexity and broad reach create unintended consequences. They contend that it unfairly penalizes American companies engaged in legitimate international business operations, potentially putting them at a disadvantage compared to their foreign counterparts. The legal battle over the GILTI rule reached its pinnacle in a landmark decision by the Supreme Court. In a closely watched case, the court ultimately sided with the Trump administration, upholding the constitutionality of the controversial tax provision. The court's decision, while a victory for proponents of the GILTI rule, did not come without its share of controversy. The justices were divided in their opinions, reflecting the complex legal and economic arguments surrounding the case. Writing for the majority, Chief Justice John Roberts argued that the GILTI rule fell within Congress's broad authority to regulate taxation, as granted by the Constitution. The court found that the provision did not violate the apportionment clause, which requires direct taxes to be apportioned among the states based on population. This decision effectively cemented the GILTI rule as a cornerstone of U.S. international tax law, with significant implications for American businesses operating globally. The court's ruling signaled a shift towards a more assertive approach to taxing offshore earnings, potentially reshaping the landscape of international taxation for years to come. The Supreme Court's decision to uphold the GILTI rule reignited the debate over its merits and drawbacks. Proponents hailed the ruling as a victory for tax fairness and a step to prevent tax avoidance. They argue it levels the playing field and protects the U.S. tax base. However, critics argue it creates a significant compliance burden and stifles innovation. They contend it unfairly targets American companies, reducing their global competitiveness. Section 5. Business Voices, a mixed bag of reactions to the ruling. The Supreme Court's decision on the GILTI rule elicited mixed reactions. Some welcomed the clarity, while others worried about operational impacts. Large corporations felt less impact, having already adjusted. Smaller businesses, however, faced added compliance burdens. Industry groups were divided, with tech and pharma disappointed, but manufacturing and agriculture supportive. Section 6. The Political Divide. Republicans and Democrats respond. The Supreme Court's decision on the GILTI rule fell along predictable partisan lines, reflecting the deep political divisions over tax policy in the United States. Republicans, generally supportive of the Trump administration's tax cuts, praised the ruling as a victory for American businesses and the economy. They argued that the GILTI rule is essential to prevent tax avoidance and ensure that multinational corporations pay their fair share. Republicans also emphasized the provision's role in encouraging investment and job creation in the United States. Democrats, on the other hand, largely criticized the ruling. They argued that the GILTI rule disproportionately benefits wealthy corporations and exacerbates income inequality. Democrats also expressed concerns about the provision's complexity and its potential to harm American competitiveness. The partisan divide over the GILTI rule highlights the broader debate over the role of government in regulating corporate behavior and ensuring tax fairness. It also underscores the challenges of crafting tax policy in a globalized economy, where businesses operate across borders and tax laws vary widely. Section 7. Navigating the aftermath potential implications of the decision. The Supreme Court's decision to uphold the GILTI rule has far-reaching implications for American businesses operating globally. The ruling provides much-needed clarity and certainty regarding the legality and enforceability of the provision, allowing companies to plan accordingly. However, the decision also raises a number of questions and challenges for businesses. Companies with significant foreign earnings must carefully assess the impact of the GILTI rule on their tax liability and adjust their operations accordingly. This may involve restructuring their global supply chains, revisiting transfer pricing arrangements, or reconsidering investment decisions. Companies must also navigate the complexities of the GILTI calculation, which involves numerous factors and requires specialized expertise. Moreover, the Supreme Court's decision could have broader implications for international taxation. The ruling may embolden other countries to adopt similar measures to prevent tax avoidance by multinational corporations. This could lead to a more fragmented and complex global tax landscape, creating challenges for businesses operating in multiple jurisdictions. Companies must closely monitor developments in international tax law and adapt their strategies to ensure compliance. Section 8. A global perspective. GILTI's impact on international taxation. The Supreme Court's decision on the GILTI rule has reverberated beyond U.S. borders, influencing the global conversation on international taxation. The ruling comes at a time when countries worldwide are grappling with the challenges of taxing multinational corporations in the digital age. The GILTI rule, seen as a novel approach to addressing base erosion and profit shifting, has garnered attention from policymakers and tax authorities globally. Some view it as a potential model for other countries seeking to prevent tax avoidance and ensure a fairer distribution of tax revenues. However, the GILTI rule has also faced criticism from some quarters. Critics argue that it is unilateral and extraterritorial, potentially conflicting with international tax treaties and creating double taxation for businesses. The GILTI rule's impact on international taxation remains to be seen. It is too early to tell whether it will serve as a catalyst for greater international cooperation on tax matters or exacerbate existing tensions. Section 9. Looking ahead, future challenges and uncertainties. The Supreme Court's decision on the GILTI rule provides clarity but raises uncertainties. How will the Biden administration enforce the provision? They may prioritize enforcement of the GILTI rule. This impacts businesses with significant foreign earnings. The ongoing debate over international tax reform continues. OECD negotiations on a global minimum tax are crucial. These could impact the GILTI rule and U.S. tax law. Companies must monitor developments and adapt. The GILTI rule faces continued legal challenges. Questions remain about its application in specific cases. These challenges could lead to further litigation. Companies must stay informed and seek expert advice. Section 10. Conclusion. A landmark ruling with lasting consequences. The Supreme Court's decision to uphold the GILTI rule represents a pivotal moment in the evolution of U.S. international tax law. The ruling provides much-needed clarity for businesses, but also raises a host of challenges and uncertainties. The GILTI rule's long-term impact remains to be seen. It has the potential to reshape the landscape of international taxation, influencing the behavior of multinational corporations and the policies of governments worldwide. As the global economy continues to evolve, so too will the challenges of taxing multinational corporations. The GILTI rule is just one piece of a complex puzzle that policymakers and businesses must work together to solve. By understanding the intricacies of the GILTI rule, businesses can better navigate the evolving landscape of international taxation and position themselves for success in a rapidly changing world.